Hi there, BlueCornerCreasigns. Selena here. Just wanted to go ahead and give you some information regarding gauges, the weights, and a comparison of two different metals, and also just a little experiment just for fun to see if it breaks or not. Because I've had some questions on these, and I understand that sometimes we may not understand gauges and what that means and how thick they are and how much they weigh, that sort of thing. You know, since you can't try them on and we're shopping online, I try my best to give you as many visuals as I can. You can always search YouTube and then use the keyword BlueCornerCreasigns, the whole word, and you'll see all of my videos. I talk about metals, I talk about how to purchase from Etsy for the first time, I talk about some of the charms that I have, really a whole lot of different things, even ways to help you with patina whenever your items do oxidize rather. So, excuse my hands, I do metal work, so it's a dirty job. So this is inks and oxidation and metals and acids that I have. So they're clean, I just washed them, but excuse me. That's just how it works. So I wanted to go ahead and start off with showing a couple of different things. First of all, I want to show you this. This is an aluminum bracelet or an aluminum cuff, and this rivals sterling. As you can see here, sterling. Of course, these are not polished, and I still have to round them out, and when you see on my site, they don't look anything like this. So they're all handmade, polished, hammered, etc. But for time's sake, let me go ahead and get to it. So this is aluminum, and this is a 14 gauge aluminum cuff. This is lightweight. It rivals the look of sterling silver. However, sterling silver does tarnish, and you use a polishing cloth and the tarnish comes off. And I have a polish cloth right here. And then there's different polishing cloths that aid with this. Like, see, here's a polishing cloth. And you can just polish it up a little bit. But that's not what I use. I use a polishing compound and a Dremel. You see it shines right up. All of my silver can be acid tested with any jeweler. If you have an acid test kit at home, feel free to do that, because these are solid sterling silver. They are not, I repeat, not silver plated. They are solid sterling silver when you request sterling silver. So going back to the aluminum 14 gauge. 14 gauge, let's start off with that. What does 14 gauge mean? That's the thickness, what you see here, of the metal. So 14 gauge, you could look at any, you can look it up on Google. There you go. And I have a chart right here as a friendly little reminder. The thickness for the 14 gauge would be 1.897 millimeters. Excuse me. So what is 1.897 millimeters? Here's a penny. I'm going to go ahead and use some common things that we're all used to seeing. And you can see it's thicker than a penny. There's the tip of a pen. And you can see the comparison there. Let's go ahead and get that into focus. Give me 1 second. Alrighty. Let's see if that focuses right now. Alrighty. So going back, there's the tip of the ballpoint pen, and that gives you some reference as to the thickness of the 14 gauge. Now, what are the pros and cons of aluminum, you might ask? Well, aluminum, I sell it as a less expensive cuff. So if you're looking for a less expensive, non-reactive, this is food grade aluminum. It's pure food grade aluminum. What that means is that it's just a really pure aluminum. It's so pure that you can put food, you can package food in this, and that's how safe it is, because it doesn't rust, it doesn't tarnish, none of that. So it's actually less reactive to your skin than solid sterling silver. Again, it's lightweight. And how lightweight is it? Well, we can see that the gauge is 14 here, right? And let's see how lightweight it is. Here's a jeweler scale, and it has been calibrated. So it looks like you can see that there. Let's go ahead and tar it. I'm going to bring it to 0, just like how we did in chemistry class. So let's go ahead and lay this up here. And I'm going to hold it up here lightly, and that weighs 4.0, approximately 4.0 Oh, it jiggles back and forth. It's a very sensitive scale. So let's just call it 4 grams even. Not holding it, let's lay it down. Let's see what settles. 4.07 grams. Okay, so what's 4.07 grams? Or 06, or 07, or 06. Switching back and forth. Let's go ahead and weigh a penny. A penny is 2.5 grams. And a paper clip, the way I learned it in school, and I haven't tested this out before I did the video, but they always taught us that the regular large silver clip would be about 1 gram. Let's see, this one is coated. Let's see how much that one weighs. Yep, it looks like school was pretty much on target, 1.10 grams. So again, I'm gonna write that down so we can remember the weights of that. So the aluminum 14 gauge was 4.06 grams. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the silver. For sterling silver, I use 16 gauge. Here's a 16 gauge right here. Here's a sterling silver, okay? And again, as you all know, by looking at my shop, I curve the edges, I Dremel them down. The ends, all of this is polished down. You know, it's all rather, my point is it's all complete, it's all a finish. This is an unfinished cuff blank that I used. So this is where it starts. These are where your cuffs start from should you purchase this. Okay, so 16 gauge. Okay, let's talk about 16 gauge. What is 16 gauge? Like we talked about the other aluminum, it's 14 gauge. This is a 16 gauge. Just use a reference. Here's the penny. Okay, so it looks like it's still slightly thicker than the penny. That's my estimation. That's my, that's what I see through the lens here. It's still thicker than a penny, right? And we see copper pennies, they're pretty durable, okay? And again, every metal has different malleability, which means that you can work it differently. There are certain metals that are harder and softer. Aluminum is a softer metal than sterling silver. And when you ask, well, what do you mean by softer, Selena? A softer metal is that we noticed here that it weighs less, so it's less dense. So I'm going to prove to you how it weighs less because we haven't weighed this one yet. So we see the 14 gauge weighed 4.06 grams. Here's a sterling silver. And the way it works with gauges is it goes up. The lower the gauge, the thicker it is. The higher the gauge, the thinner it gets. It's kind of contradictory to what our brain usually understands. So here we go, sterling silver 16 gauge, and that is 1.519 millimeters, right? The 14 gauge was 1.897. So there's a slight, it's a 0.3, etc., 0.3 difference. Okay, so since we're talking about both of those, let's go ahead and put those two side by side. And I'll tell you why this is crooked in just a second. It's my test cuff. So let's go ahead and see if we can see with a naked eye the thickness difference. The top one is the 14 gauge, the bottom one's a 16 gauge. So you can see the thickness difference right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and weigh it. Let's go ahead and see what this one weighs. Let's turn it back on. And again, this is a jewelry scale. It's very sensitive. Okay, we'll tar it, set it to 0, make sure it's calibrated. Yep, I mean it's calibrated, but let's go ahead and make sure it's set to 0. All right, so we'll weigh that one. That one weighs 13.24. So that's a significant difference from this one weighed what? 4.06. So the sterling silver right there, it's more dense. And even at a 16 gauge, it weighs more than the aluminum. So what does that tell us? It tells us that this metal is, some of the attributes of it are that it's a harder metal, it weighs more, and that's basically what it is. It's harder and it weighs more. So 4.06 grams, 13.24 grams. So 4 times 3 is 12. So this weighs approximately 3 times the weight of the aluminum. Okay, so that's some of the pros and cons. If you don't want heavy jewelry or you're going to want to stack them, aluminum is great because it's light. If you don't mind the weight, you know, we're all used to what sterling silver is on our wrist. It has a nice weight to it. So that's that on the 16 gauge. And this is a 1/4 inch, okay? So again, the way we learned in school, you know, if it's a 1/4 inch, you know, it's going to be let's go ahead and see how pliable it is. You see, it takes you can see by the crinkling of my hands that it takes a bit to bend it, right? So you see the pressure in my hands right there? Not bending, bending. So you see how it takes that much pressure to bend it, okay? Let's go ahead and see if we can, how we bend the aluminum. This one is easier to bend. This one does bend easy, see? You see it doesn't take that much effort. See that? Okay. So let's go ahead and look at another example of sterling silver. Here is, I don't use these. These are, let's see, what gauge is this one? This is a 20 gauge. And I don't use this one because I like for my cuffs to be a little bit more substantial. And this one is, like I said, 20 gauge, and you can see how it's compared to the 14 gauge aluminum. Let's weigh that. And let's tar that to 0. Make sure, yep. How much is a 20 gauge weigh that I don't use? That one still has a significant weight to it, 8.34. Let me go ahead and straighten this camera out so we can see if we can get a better angle.